And we're not sure how many people are regular to use the window the something happening for often. And like on the same power student introduce myself and speak a little bit more about the bill. My name is Samka, and I'm personally like to argue labs of passage bill. I can start with this one seriously. I previously been involved with capacity in the US where I'm going to stop going after key isolating experiences with sexual the risk of the hands of other teenagers. I never thought I would go back to dating. Instead, like picking up about agency needed on high school along with super recently. Even before thought by some movement again. My friends led me to administration in high school and soon bring more black and brown with the story of Africans, the 5 state two-year-old, and hiring our teachers tolerant brownest on. I ran a full questions and saw my YouTube a video for the Q&As of some of my favorite rappers that we it occurred to me that Phil loves in historical like doesn't seem to take itself too seriously. It still urged on my experiences in the beginning for the side of state cheaper and wash. My data doesn't make a comments there are only 20 people in this room. At the end of the semester on, I saw an application of a few months of committed professional color. The committee seemed like something the Frank plus to Kenny was like by. Soon after I met Miss with eBay, the then chair of Jama, and it came upon my later came back to share. Over the course of the second semester of that year, we put together the first annual speech hop that she belonged to the craftsmen. All of these events specifically held people of color by people of color for the first time ever, and it's cheaper. The following year, April and I helped them support Latin for on Dixon and hashtag in 2000 short. We also worked to list the first ever available sport people of color. Frank Teschel's top in conversations over operating the units prior to historically, obviously, it is in this very cheaper. Was able to success and began this reward following year. I also became a part of the council every second year, specifically the base who team. I found myself really enjoying being again. The following year, I ran in this lucky treasure for the joy to my stay. You don't in the past year visiting candidates successfully different debates about seeing opportunities. This room more depressive in and I accepted. Thanks in part, in large part to help blessing the scene and raise the current butchers along with the desired Joseph today. That being said, the states like vaccine is trying to bring how far the bill on the society of Australia. Fundamentally, it has a striking been on the British like foundation. This sustained figures that follow the fill. However, it's the hashtag fill was like a regional board where it's streaming for you session. The experience is shared last in state art for each senior working with college structures to investigate between space and ensuring this never causes again. And instead these spaces serve people of color. The hope of the fill and the interpreting is days where people of color not feel seen, but feel heard when I into. If you use rates that any of your experiences in the bill, these then constantly are actually doesn't take concerns the kind of serious to do. Your time in college is a lot of things, but fundamentally is fun to learn and to explore. And I hope the fill can't be any tools to a place where everyone feels free to do so. As always, my names are open and around small data section, including those for the TCD bill. Thank you for your time and the usual station.
Says I'm the socket. It's the biggest organ I haven't. Right, so that's what we're on. Reply back there, something great. My own texture would be as well, then I'm good today. I was like, this is going to be actually I'm going to be there. The finisher, I mean, actually, so like, don't be great, and how in this should be, you do so, we're using a cutting snips to paint, you know, called multiple publications on around say papers, I'm sure that you're to see people for to use. Oh, so it comes from subcategories. So when they start out vigorous, and it's submitted in, it's called the involves conversations on the paradox, though it isn't a lot of around cases. I need to be by bother called the classic as what the abilities. The omniscient, omniscient, talking out that you're through the scene trying shit that in seven pet for the wall. And the rest are. Hey, don't get back thinking about your what's all go from my top regulation? That's what something. Anyway, so it goes. I don't talk about guy. So she odds to each that. I want to got some rather 5 feet shorter and I'm with her and he's in well, they wrote. Just look, call it now, feeling smart. Every clear just green. I made bikes actually well up either to the mass and I didn't even go crazy. But you don't want to be rich like me. You don't have to work like me. You don't have to fly right about ladder and be self-sufficient. You don't want to have like this. Not sure what bigger bills like this. You don't want to be small about being adult singing. So about being adult singing. Oh, I'll take it out. I already know festivals. Baby lived all the time and the old house. And to the thing that the CM was some of the things of players were actually world night plays through a trout at South Avenue College. College they go great for years of being happy. All working. Anyway, let's go.
Got it now, the power of that I can feel it to them.
And then up the other room. So we have a cop-out for Miss Crazy. It's about perversion of those that voice only bearing a the shade of the body numbs and minor reps. You see how works by our sexual. That's basically being the eye. It's unsafe to tired to say that people tell me why I'm annoyed calling by That's what it was like. You need to shoot with the age up, you know. I was like those 12 spears like you straights and I always feel like dang I could sorry. It's about how it's not like remembering this knowledge. I like shit because when I quit for money just said, can you I don't care what you want to do. But how do you feel about those wolves? God, that's not and these are all these reasons in it. Read like that's it. I'd like to have Korea see on consolidation is much to not upgrade this.
I got to about them.
No, it's the combination. Save the box man. There's always people in the street who are the couch. Really shadow. The same place to non-burst about you. Did the it's already about. I'm on a hard. Like me, Lord. Oh my God. I can't go back. I keep that in the dark and sagging and I can't do it anymore. Oh, I'm gone. That's the no call, no like our and selling ours and usually our goals. Like those are so they can still speak out with ours. It's not Clyde. They're the head of the process. That's which the players call them this people. I mean already. Like I thought they may think that the monasteries is in so much the press of fucking under of an bottom day. So I'll get back to you on the report that fought the greatest age. And of course how it is very long. It's called the standard that unifies humanity and body's joy. So I should
Are there any objections to me signing these minutes as a true and accurate record of the last public business meeting? There being none, I shall duly sign. Everyone, welcome to the University Philosophical Society. This week's debate is the liferaft debate. Standing orders are as follows. Speeches are a maximum of 7 minutes for student speakers and 10 minutes for guests. After the first minute and before the last minute of each speech, which will be signified by a bell, speakers from opposing sides and audience members are free to offer points of information. We encourage general audience participation during our debates. If you hear something you like, you can shout hear, hear, or slay. And if you hear something you don't like, you can shout shame. We prioritize respect during our debates, and as a result, if you have any concerns about what is said tonight, our senior member of council, David Kelly, will be around at the reception all evening and is contactable via email at smc@tcdphil.com. Alternatively, I'm contactable via president@tcdphil.com. Without further ado, I will introduce the speakers for tonight's debate. Speaking on proposition, we have Professor Shane Bergen, Associate Professor of Physics at UCD and recently elected Fellow at the American Physical Society. We have Karen Winders, second year biomed student and secretary pro tempore of Phil. Last in opposition, we have Sean O'Connor, a second-year engineering with management student. Speaking on opposition, we have James Ryan, third-year law student and auditor of the Law SOC. Speaking second, we have Kaya Smith, second-year English and Sociology student. And speaking last, we have Dr. Claire Moriarty, research fellow with the Department of Philosophy.
Good evening, everyone. How are we? It's a pleasure to be back in my alma mater. It's 8 years since I have been banished to Clonskeagh, and I bring word from the colonies that things are going pretty well out there. Not quite as well as here, but well enough. It's lovely to be back in Trinity and at the Phil. I'm having flashbacks to my 1999 Freshers Week, and back then the Phil and the Hist had the prime place under the front arch. I know things have moved since, and my first day on campus, and I'd come from school where debating was a big thing, and we were accosted as soon as we went under the arch. You'd be glad to hear I chose the right path. I was invited about 8 years ago to take part in the liferaft debate, and it was fantastic. Not only because I got to meet the wonderful Neville Cox, who rightly handed my arse to me on a plate. It was about a nuclear disaster. And as a physicist, you can imagine that everyone in the room was like, oh, there was a nuclear disaster. Well, we wonder who started that then. So nevertheless, physics prevailed. I note, though, that this one seems a little bit more real. The idea of a flood engulfing Trinity College Dublin is not that outlandish. Indeed, it happened in the past. The name Townsend Street is so named because that's where town ended. Where the science block is now was once the sea. So you can, so it's quite possible. But I suppose, I think about my time in college in 1999, I was certainly the end of history era. When I was an undergraduate, we thought the world was perfect. Long, long before the Twin Towers came down, and things unfortunately took a turn for the worst. And I think of that joyous time back then, and I think about the fact that you chose a life raft topic that is arguably something that could happen. An actual disaster is something to come back to. So we have a question before us. Which group of students should we save? And I'm here to tell you that you should, and I'm conscious that the Phil is probably predominantly, at least it used to be, students from the arts and humanities. I hope it's changed, but I'm going to make the case to you tonight with my wonderful colleagues that we should be saving science. Okay, so nothing has changed, basically. You're still all budding lawyers and students that have only a couple of hours a week, but I would like to make the case that you should save science. But I feel, and maybe my science colleagues here are going to be kicking me after this, I feel that science needs to do an awful lot to be worthy of this place on the raft. Because I think for science to be worthy of being saved, science needs to save itself first. And I'm going to try and make the case to you tonight, not just to save science, but to save a sort of science or a vision for science. Because when science is done well, science is a rich way of knowing the world. But I hasten to add, science is not the only way of knowing the world. And I think way too many of us in science, in engineering, technology, and maths think our way is the only way, and the rest of them are just reading books. I think that's a really narrow way of looking at it. We must be humble about our place in the cosmos of knowledge, and not to kind of take up too much ground. Because when science is done well, we're able to enable the inner voyager in each of us as humans, right? If we were to, when you think about missions like NASA do, or random science papers that you might read about going, who in the name of God cares about that? right? Well, firstly, it's probably just a way of that student getting their PhD and moving on, and that's all very well. But it kind of allows us to be human, to be able to do that discovery. And ultimately, what science can do, and I would suggest, and my colleagues on this side are probably going to say they do it too, but I'll ask them how many go to their offices every day. What we are able to do is we're able to cooperate, and when we work well together, we're solutions driven. And the application of science can be wonderful and impactful for humanity. You think like obvious things like vaccines, right? The fact that we're all still here after a global pandemic. Things like organized farming. Things like being able to make the world a small space. To be able to hear so many diverse voices in a university like this. Even things like entertainment and the fact that we can meet in a room like this and have electric light. These are all due to science and scientists being able to do their thing. But, okay, there is a big but, that's the ideal. And unfortunately, it isn't evident every day that that sort of vision of science as this sort of like, way to kindle human spirit, that's not something we see. I know because I teach in it, and I know because I was one of you once where I sat through undergraduate lectures and I would just sit there taking notes as the physicist wrote it all up on the board, and I hadn't a clue what they were talking about, and I figured I'll figure it out between now and the exam, and into the library to try and do that. What I'm trying to say is that a science education, unfortunately for many of you, is a rote-learned experience. Most of you that chose to move away from science when finishing your secondary school education may have done so because you thought, this is the ultimate memory test, and I don't want to be part of it. When it comes to research, I said a minute ago we're at our best when we work together. However, research has become hyper-competitive. There are too many people for the limited number of places to do research. What I would suggest, of course, is that we have more places, not fewer people. Science has become individualistic. I need to go first on the paper. It's my discovery. Science, unfortunately, is excessively cozy with vested interests that will pay for science that the state won't pay for. We call all the vaccines the Pfizer vaccine. We never refer to them by the names of often the immigrant scientists that worked on them in the first place. And unfortunately, it gets worse. My God, does science know how to hammer scientists? When it comes to a professional look at ourselves, we do so well at treating people like shit and making them work hard. Precarity is a massive issue in science. We have such a limited number of professors, and then a growing sea of people that are in these sort of limbo positions after their PhDs who would like to move into permanent secure employment where they can exercise their academic freedom. Then we talk to one another in papers that, frankly, only they and one or two others are able to understand the English, let alone understand the mathematics and the science within. And we completely think, unfortunately, as a system that we're above the public. Well, our view often is that they listen to us and believe us because we're clever. And that unfortunately doesn't fly. We see the results of this in terms of populist backlash against science. And I could go on, but I feel I'm leaning into the negative here too much, and I don't want to run out of time and going, God, that guy just hates his job. So you're wondering, why would we save science? Then, I haven't even gone into the fact that it was physicists that came up with ways to deny climate. And there were some of the same physicists that were actually working with big tobacco to slow the realization among the public, to sow doubt about why cigarettes were harmful. That was known from the 30s. But because of scientists colluding with big industry, and scientists therefore being more believable by the public, we slowed down public health interventions by half a century. And I don't know how many people died as a result. But I still want to save science. I don't want to let them guys in the arts block win the day, because I truly do believe in the awesome capacity of science as a human enterprise. I think that when we as a species are able to put our minds to it, to work together about things that are positive for the world, then we can truly be our best selves. As I said, though, and this is the real kicker, right? How are we going to save science? We're going to have to be a little bit more like them, right? Or borrow their clothing. And by them, I mean our esteemed colleagues in the arts block. We must be trusted and we must be trustworthy. And the basis of trust of science is not that we just come up with facts and facts are real, right? I don't want to sound like Donald Trump, but it's not all about facts. Science is trustworthy because it is a sustained enterprise. Science connects to the work of other scientists. It's building on one another's ideas, and our knowledge is socially constructed. So we do a peer review process that ensures that we not gatekeep, but that we manage one another's discoveries. And that's really important. And I think for us to be able to show that off, to be able to connect with the wider world around why we are trusted, we must do, they're going to love this, so I'll go on for a second, right, is to say we need to connect with our friends in philosophy and realize that the idea of epistemology, the idea of knowledge is interesting, and that science is not the only way of knowing the world. We must embrace pedagogues and learn that we can actually teach science in ways that are interesting and engaging, and people want to come to class. We can engage with the complexity of communal work, our sociologist friends. We can embrace the idea that diversity is an epistemic strength. It's not just good that we look like Benetton ads in our labs, but it is really important that we have diverse communities of people who bring different perspectives and different ways of knowing to science. It's also important that we work with trust proxies, people who can tell stories, people in the media, and educators. And finally, right, and I know there's going to be a big crowd here from the Phil, we need to work with those who make decisions and those who uphold the law and think about justice. So unfortunately, we're in science, I think, for us to be worthy of being saved, we are going to have to collaborate more with our colleagues in the arts block. But I think if we can borrow a little of what they're selling, we will truly be worthy of that last place on the life draft. Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank Dr. Bergen for that very fine speech and call on James to open the case for side reports.
So I feel very kind of underdressed now. I'm kind of dressed like an 80s dad in a sitcom at the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, both members of LawSoc and Normal, my name is James Ryan. I do have the distinct pleasure of opening the debate for the side of the arts block this evening. You can probably tell that I represent the arts block based on the distinct lack of Lynx Africa on my breath. Instead, the distinguished musk of Dior Sauvage permeates me this evening. That's a joke, by the way. But the premise set out before the House this evening is that a disastrous climate catastrophe has struck the world, and Trinity has but one lifeboat, and would you rather take the arrogant assholes of the arts block or the dingy denizens of the Hamilton? And your choice here does appear quite simple. Why would you ever take the mullet-having, intermezzo-reading, manipulative parasites here in the arts block over the higher-level maths-taking whizzes of the Hamilton, okay? But the thing is, this is a false dichotomy. And a dichotomy sounds like something I would do to myself to avoid talking to them. But I will argue the scientists are equally, if not more, useless than us. And also, if there is a catastrophe, I think the art students deserve to be saved purely by the immense schadenfreude we would create by watching us fail. So throwing around this debate, there will be allegations here of future joblessness and uselessness of us by the Hamilton bench, right? They might claim that any degree that we have would only qualify us to work in ancient Greece, or perhaps Renaissance-era Florence if we're really pushing the boat out. And my answer to that allegation is yes, you're absolutely right. But the thing is, wouldn't this post-apocalyptic world better resemble the Greek Golden Age anyway? There will be no stock market for you to mansplain to your girlfriend, okay? There will be no GitHub shortcut for you to get out of doing any problem solving whatsoever. And there will be no Discord roleplay polycule for you to exchange American military secrets on, which is a true story, by the way. But the thing is, the apocalyptic future, it's not going to be lit up by those shitty LEDs we all bought in 2020. It's going to be lit up by torches and stories, as our forefathers once did long ago, okay? We, the art students, are going to be the new Google job-having, Capital Docs-dwelling, Web Summit-founding pricks of New Eden, with our ability to recite meaningless prose and rampant sexual deviancy. The lifeboat here is the great equalizer, all right? Your ability around a combustion engine is about as useful on that life raft as any of the shite I've already forgotten from my degree. Moving a little bit onwards, I think that Hamilton, anyway, is overestimating its usefulness during this debate because these aren't just engineers and scientists. Lest we forget, they are Trinity engineers and scientists, okay? Looking up the degree, looking up the reviews for your own degree on the perfidious forum called Reddit, your own students have admitted your superfluousness to me. One user said, I'm going to read this, and I quote, very theoretical compared to TUD. Another saying, were I to start over again, I would seriously consider DCU. So not only did this research make me have to read Reddit, it also confirmed to me that you've worn more cat ears than hard hats during your 5 years in this institution. And while I might side with the sciences were this debate about the technical colleges, thankfully for the Coppers floor staff, that is not the case this evening. Instead, by the end of your statistically difficult degrees, you will all face one inconvenient truth. Your degree will read the exact same as mine. Yours still says Bachelor of Arts on it, so you can suck it. As Neville Cox, the registrar, will be there, it turns out, we're not too different, you and I. I merely embrace my uselessness. I use it as a weapon. You fight and plead and beg, but you flounder all the same. It is in our uselessness that lies my case for the arts block's survival. Well, as I said before, we would be far more entertaining to watch fail, okay? Going back to the ancient period, it took bread and circuses to, really entertain the crowds. And that is exactly what we, the clowns of the arts block, will do for you, okay? Anybody who's read Cormac McCarthy's The Road, first of all, I hope you get the help you need. Secondly, we all know how shit a post-apocalyptic world would be anyway. And so in my eyes, there is no point living in it, and so you may as well just kind of limp towards the biological finish line in the most entertaining and messy way possible. And what better group of absolute degenerates than a bunch of ked-addicted, secretly British people who all DJ now for some reason. Okay? So I'll start off with the lawyers, given that I do belong to their brood. There's a lot to be said about us. Most of it was actually said by Professor Neville Cox at this debate 5 years ago. Yes, I did watch the recordings back. No, I have not been diagnosed yet. He called us wankers, ultimately bad people, and that not a single one of us are worth redeeming. Would anybody think I'm wrong in that assessment? And silence befalls the chamber. But wouldn't that make us wouldn't that make watching us squabble over whose limb we're going to sever to eat even better? Or whether natural law takes place if we can segregate by leaving cert points? That's far better. Because by our own admission, we are awful in survival situations, but would that not make it so much more fun to watch our self-appointed Attorney General pull the mutineer for a chat because his actions were bang out of order, or whether we can read the chore list with an originalist lens, given that the original founding fathers were eaten 2 months ago. But moving on to history students, they say those who do not read history are doomed to repeat it. But given they also say that history doesn't repeat itself, it merely rhymes, they seem to be pretty fucking bad at knowing what to prevent. Furthermore, the poster children for postgraduate unemployment theater students, they would be unparalleled entertainment, okay? Watch with glee as the zesty male lead comes out as straight after getting with half the ethereal bisexual cast during the production. And the director, this sort of very upper middle class girl with 15 scarves on at one time, kind of clings to her ability to loiter outside the Players Theatre for hours on end, seemingly doing nothing at all. And even talking about the student journalists, they have already proven their aptitude for insubordination. They kind of would have a reality TV show without an apocalypse anyway, to be honest, so they're already good. But the point I'm making is this. Our deaths would be comedic, they would be dram-filled, and they would be satisfying. We would, after all, be getting what we deserve. And that brings me to my final point. Yes, saving the arts block would probably result in worse survival prospects. However, it's my belief anyway, the destruction of the world is exactly what we deserve regardless. The Industrial Revolution and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race, as a great man and an accidental terrorist used to say. But each day that I wake up and my cobalt and lithium-containing phone wakes me up in this fresh hell, I am consumed with Luddite rage. I get upon this luxuriously heated bus to my centuries-old college and my face is full of disdain. My biological clock required me to die to some random predator like 3 years ago anyway. Okay, I'm living on borrowed time at the moment regardless. And the thing is this. A global catastrophe would return us to the good old days of, dinosaur riding and mammoth hunting, and I think that's just what the doctor ordered. And as such, I think choosing a faculty that I want to watch society burn with, I think there are no better group of maladjusted malcontents than the arts block. And so I beg you oppose the motion this evening. Thank you all very much.
That very fine speech and call on Perrin to continue the case for side science. Hear, hear.
To STEM or not to STEM? That is the question, ladies, gentlemen, and art students, that the House puts before you. The survivors, who now have the very important job of selecting who you wish to bring with you into this new age, to help you rebuild civilization and restore quality to life. Today, I will present to you why it would be detrimental to your very well-being to let any of these onto the boat. Now, if I could start by asking you all to satisfy my scientific curiosity and raise your hand if you are not a student of science. Raise it as high as your pride will permit you to. Okay, unsurprisingly, that's a lot of hands. Too many hands, some may say, but there's no shame in that. Not everyone was cut out for curing cancer. The fact is that we all probably came into this debate with some sort of internal bias as to what discipline we think is superior. It's why we chose the courses that we did. But I'd like you to set that aside for a moment, because this debate is not looking for you to change your preferences or you to admit one discipline is better than the other. It is asking you to save someone whose area of study will best benefit you. Survivors, I'm not asking you to STEM. I'm imploring you to give us, the proposition, the opportunity to STEM on your behalf so that you never need to go near a Bunsen burner or scary calculator ever again. And art students, surely given your choice of course, that's what you want. If you were to enter into a new civilization without STEM folk, in order to actually make life livable, some of you would need to trade your vintage, oversized, hand-sewn, thrifted jackets for a super sexy lab coat. And as super sexy as they are, you lot don't want to do that. You want to stick to your fictional books about your fictional characters with their fictional problems. And STEM students, would you really take medication developed by a medieval studies student? Just to give you a flavor of what that might look like, an example of a medieval prescription for acne was applying urine to the affected area. Yeah, I'll pass. And historians are somehow convinced that the year 1770 came before 1683. The future of maths would be dire. And I don't at all intend to discredit arts as a discipline because, don't get me wrong, I love a good book. The idea of snuggling up before bed with my collection of poems, candles lit, feathered quill in hand, writing cursive notations in the margins is just so quaint, very demure, very mindful. I love that, you know? But I also love stable infrastructure. Life-saving medication that isn't comprised of urine. Space exploration, modern-day agriculture, glow-in-the-dark fridge magnets. Seriously, they're so underrated. The things in life that actually matter, that make life livable. And no, not in some metaphorical or rhetorical or poetical way. Our lives as we know them would not be possible without sciences. The appliances you use every day are products of STEM-based knowledge. What a miracle it is that I'm able to stand here before all of you brilliant people and talk to you without having to worry about the roof falling on my head. And should the roof fall on my head, I can live safe in the knowledge that Sean can use his engineering magic to patch up the hole, and one of you medical students can sort me out with a Band-Aid. And sure, it would be nice to have an English student write a Wattpad story about my bravery, but with one seat left on the life raft, sacrifices have to be made, and I am willing to sacrifice my Wattpad biography for you. Now, to give some credits to arts, it does encapsulate a wide range of subjects, but there is one thing that unites these art block inhabitants. Well, two if we're included in the Doc Martens. They all despise being asked about their post-college plans. You lot complain about the lack of jobs that will adequately allow you to showcase your extraordinary intellects. Well, art students, all I can say is get your CVs ready, because by voting in favor of STEM, you'll have just eliminated 3 competitors from the job market. And STEM students, that's 3 less art students you have to listen to complain. It's a win-win. My 4-year degree, that's 4-year degrees if you didn't hear in there, 4-year degree poses absolutely no threat to the art students here today. I don't want to touch your job market with a 10-foot pole. But these guys, they have been stalking your LinkedIn. They have been eyeing up your jobs. And you know what I say to that? I say no more. No more. Because you guys deserve your life-saving medication. You deserve stable housing. And most importantly, you deserve to be able to enjoy glow-in-the-dark fridge magnets. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Karen for that very fine speech and call on Kaya to continue the case for side arts. Hear, hear.
Hello, everyone. I am the Wattpad writing English student that Perrin mentioned in her speech before, so it's good to get to give my side of the story now. I want to thank you all for being here, particularly our wonderful STEM representatives and any other STEM students in the audience. Many of you guys here, hands up? Yeah? Okay. I just want to say I'm glad to see you all made it to this side of campus. Congratulations on answering those 3 riddles correctly to be able to pass the pitches. It's really great that you would grace us with your presence tonight. Now, I know Perrin already asked, but could I get a show of hands who are art students in here? Yeah? Wonderful. We're halfway to a normal people look-alike contest. That's just what we want. So, before I get into the meat of the argument, I want to acknowledge that I have a gross and blatant conflict of interest in this debate. While I am here proudly arguing for the place of the arts and humanities on this life raft, I do a joint honours degree, and one half of that is English literature, which, come on. But the other subject is sociology, which, as I think we can all agree, is a hard and fast science. So, clearly, I have a bit of a foot in each game. That's not a saying. But I do, however, own 5 pairs of Doc Martens, so the 2 things kind of cancel each other out, guys. So now that I've flagged my bias to you all, I can get into the meat of the topic. So there's a life raft, right? The waters are rising, the world is ending. STEM students, how did you let this happen? Isn't your whole thing weather, climate, irrigation? I really feel that if the STEM faculty has failed to stop the climate disaster that led to us being in this situation, your punishment should be to be cast out. You had your chance, guys, I'm sorry. And in another strike against you, let's all be very honest here. I don't mean to offend anyone, but we all know stress and nerves can make you very sweaty. I'm a perfect example right now, but do you really want to be crammed onto the life raft with the students who aren't wearing deodorant? No. I'm sorry, but engineering and computer science, you've hung yourselves out to dry. Now, I don't want my whole speech to be just taking cheap shots at STEM students, and as they say, the best offense is a good defense. For any STEM students in the audience, by the way, that was a metaphor, which is like a funny way of where you say one thing, but you actually mean something else, just letting you guys know. Seriously, why should the arts be saved? Why is that the part of society that we need to preserve and we need to pass along? Simply put, I believe that the arts make life worth living. They promote understanding and curiosity about experiences that are different than our own. And science can be written down, it can be relearned, but the arts and everything that they encompass, language, culture, music, visual art, the preservation of history, that needs to be experienced. You might believe that you could live without the arts and that they don't make a big impact on your life, but I promise that is not true. Like, for example, even if you're not a big-time reader, literally just look at any good songwriter, right? I'm sure everyone here listens to music. Songwriters read a lot, and you can tell when they don't. I mean, take, for example, the difference between Kendrick Lamar, Nicki Minaj, some of the greatest lyricists and rappers of our time, and Ice Spice. You can tell who was reading a book when they went home. I mean, Eminem used to read the literal dictionary, for Christ's sake. Meanwhile, I once dated a guy who was a STEM student who was shocked at the big words that I used. One of those words was obtuse, by the way. Just ironic. In all seriousness, though, my grandmother used to tell me that anyone with more answers than questions is the real idiot, and you should not listen to them. And I think we all need to be asking more questions. We all need to be curious, and we all need to want to know more about the world around us. And this is where my argument gets a bit complicated, because that is something that both of us, both of our sides, seek to do. I guess my argument is just that mine is better. All I can say is that your favorite celebrity, they were a theater kid once, so think about that. For all my STEM students in the audience, by the way, that was, are you getting tired of the bit where I pretend to explain things to STEM students, by the way? Yeah? No? Okay, for all the STEM students in the audience, by the way, that was a rhetorical question, which is where you like ask a question, but you don't really want to know the answer, you just want to make a point. Now, let me go on a bit of a tangent, stay with me here. You've all seen Titanic, I assume. It's not a life raft, but they get onto a piece of wood. Who here thinks that they both could have fit on the piece of wood? Like, why didn't they just both go? Great. None of you guys have watched the movie in the last decade, all right? They both could have fit. They both tried to fit on the piece of wood, and then the weight makes Jack slide off, and the wood is pushed underneath the water. It's the weight and not the space that they're taking up, all right? That should be something that STEM students in the room should know, mass, weight, density, whatever. And I ran out of time to have this scene literally projected behind me, but if you go to 2 hours, 46 minutes of the movie and 37 seconds, I checked, because again, I have 9 contact hours, you'll see that they both could have fit. And yet so many people believe that they don't. Okay, I promise that this has a point. That's something that we've all taken out of context. That's something that we've just all heard and believed. Oh yeah, in Titanic, it's so funny, she said, "I'll never let go," and yet why didn't she let him on the little piece of wood? She tried, it didn't work. People don't remember that because people don't look to the source. We need a society of people who are empowered to seek out source material, who are empowered to find the context, who are empowered to question what they're told, and that is what an arts and humanities education provides. They say that only rats can survive the apocalypse. But what people fail to acknowledge, what they fail to mention, is that at the end of history, after you, or me, or this building, what will remain, what we will be remembered by, is the cold, hard skeleton of the arts block, still standing. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Kaya for that very fine speech and call on Sean to close out Slide Science. Here's here!
Sorry, I just have to get my speech. I just kept it in my hist tote bag. So, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why I'm speaking to you today is because the Phil had literally no other option. I am speaking as their last resort, as the bottom of the debating barrel, as the plan Z. If chamber speakers were courses on the CAO, I'd be arts in UCD. You see, any time I have been invited to speak at chamber, I can never seem to be taken seriously. Every time something goes wrong, I shouldn't have spilled milk on that guest speaker, or ran around in a high-vis jacket, or pretended to have a heart attack when someone counters one of my points. As a result, the Phil are convinced that I cannot take a debate seriously and have struck a proverbial "do not invite to speak in chamber" sign next to my name. But the life raft debate is a funny one, because in order to have the debate, you need to actually find STEM people to speak on the motion. And this is an interesting challenge, because finding a STEM student who's willing to talk to more than 2 people at once is a bit like trying to find an art student who bothers to come in before 11 a.m. Glad you're self-aware. And so the Phil were left with no choice. I have ended up, despite everyone's best intentions, back in chamber once again, speaking to you all today. The reason I was picked was because I am something that the Phil could not resist. I am an engineering student. Of all the STEM degrees out there, my one is the platonic ideal of STEM. It's the essence of once-a-week showers, of Discord roleplay polycule, of savouring the moment your barista hands you your coffee because it's the closest you've been to feeling the touch of a woman since October. The Phil couldn't resist pawning off this motion to a STEM degenerate like me. And so the society has forgave me my errors and allowed me to speak on one strict condition: that I will take this debate seriously. And so today, I'd like to solemnly swear to Phil Council, to Annika, to everyone that I will not perform a single stunt, use a single prop, or in any way use the society to fuel my desperate need for attention. And so in the spirit of taking this seriously, I didn't want just my opinion on this motion. I actually got the opinion of our very own provost, Linda Doyle. I conducted an interview with her last week, and I've brought the recording with me today. And this is serious, guys, serious speaker. I'd like to play some snippets today and share some of the more salient and most of all, more serious points that our provost had to say about this matter. Annika, if you would kindly play the audio file, thank you. Honest to God, Annika, I didn't mean to do that. I don't know how that happened. I must have misnamed the file. I really am sorry. What was meant to happen was that a recording would play of Linda Doyle saying, in her very own words, because I really did run this interview, that STEM students are the ones that get things done. And I want to delve a bit more into why our provost would say that. So, to make my case, I'd like to use one of our speakers on the STEM side of the bench. We have with us tonight from UCD's School of Physics, Dr. Shane Bergen. Now, in 2013, Shane ran an initiative called City of Physics, where they sent Trinity physics students out into the city, clad in physics t-shirts and jackets and badges, to talk to the people of Dublin City, you know, the welcoming, lovely, friendly, beautiful, amicable, and famously curious people of Dublin about science. Like, this is actually real, by the way. And I was reading a Trinity News article about this, and I don't know about you, but the main question that was on my mind was how exactly the people of Dublin reacted to this, you know, spontaneous science-based banter. The only thing the article says is this: Dubliners responded well. Now, you can tell a lot from that sentence. Fuck, is that a minute? Okay, time is relative. Firstly, you can be pretty confident that the City of Physics chose their geographical focus very carefully. You know, I'd be very surprised if Dr. Bergen's fledgling students, you know, his little heralds of science, spread their love of physics as far as, say, the streets of Coolock. You also get the sense from the ambiguity of the sentence, Dubliners responded well, that the journalist perhaps didn't join
as they marched out to the main streets of Dublin. Perhaps, for some reason, this journalist saw a risk that the well-meaning STEM reps did not, and decided to slip out the Nassau Street entrance before one of the STEM students' noses went from a 3D vector space to a two-dimensional plane. Thanks, Dr. Bergen. Now, you may be wondering, Sean, why are you ripping into Dr. Bergen's entire life mission? And to that I'd say that I actually am this. In fact, I think there's something beautiful about people like Dr. Bergen. I think Dr. Bergen represents the core goodness of all STEM students, and that they are completely and utterly and fundamentally socially oblivious. And this is a good thing. You know, I think it's important to note that despite my cynicism, the City of Physics was actually a huge success. And who else would have thought to do something as mad as that, except for someone who was in one way very brilliant, but in another way, you know, completely dim. The point of this debate is to see who you would rather share life raft with. And in a time of apocalyptic crisis, you want someone like Dr. Bergen, who's completely and utterly out of tune with reality. But who has a massive brain and says fantastic, wonderful, and yet meaningless things like, we must be humble in our place in the cosmos of science. I think this is the real problem with art students. You know, you're all too aware. But I'm not talking about the type of awareness that causes, you know, like, meaningful action. I'm talking about the type of awareness that gets at most one post on your Instagram story. Perhaps STEM students are not as aware of politics or literature or post-colonial perspectives. But do we need to be to have a meaningful impact on the world? You know, just full knowledge of how horrible the world is not actually paralyzes and impedes any action. I'd encourage everyone to take like a STEM student, to think like Dr. Bergen, and instead of coming up with vague, sweeping economic theories, find one area you're interested in, and try to make one corner of the world better. And don't worry about how it fits into the modern context of our day. So, ladies and gentlemen, when things are going to shit, you want someone who will start fixing and not start yapping. And for that reason, I believe that Hamilton should get the life raft. Thank you very much.
It's a worrying time for publicly funded research in Ireland. We've had this merger between Science Foundation Ireland and the Irish Research Council. They call it a merger, some of us have referred to it as the swallowing of the Irish Research Council by Science Foundation Ireland. So there's some understandable anxiety about the restructuring and the prospects for arts and humanities funding under this new body where a lot of CEOs on the board, very close links to the Department of Enterprise, who don't tend to work with homes. So in this slide, I want to express solidarity and express kindness between the arts and humanities research community and the sciences and parity of esteem and all that. That's that one. Okay. So a note on methodology. Philosophers don't have to love about methodology usually, so this is a gracious act on my behalf of my characters. I'm going to discuss the disputational methodology I'm taking forward. So in the style of William Molyneux, who was the Amica of the 1690s version of the Dublin Philosophical Society, which is the ancestral organisation of this one. I'm going to use the argumentative strategy he used in the 1690 banger, the case against Ireland being bound by Acts of Parliament in England. I'm going to give a series of arguments, one after another, with zero regard for mutual consistency between the individual arguments. I'm going to throw a lot of the wall and see if I can stick. Argument 1, pragmatic case. So we've heard a lot about how helpful scientists will be. We don't know what our post-apocalypse environment is going to be like, we have to admit that. But probably some rudimentary conditions, probably we're going to be farming and irrigating under difficult circumstances, and the scientists will tell us in this instance, they're the guys to trust on this. But you know who knows how to grow food in bad situations? Anthropologists, and they work in my book. The idea that taking the botanists out of the lab and putting them into these rudimentary conditions that they'll automatically know how to deal with, I think is a little bit of a myth. I actually think people who read in the history of sciences are much better placed to tackle the horrible slaughter that awaits us when we win this debate. So, and you know, that's what the archaeologists are really trained for, so it'd be really rude of science to take that away from them. Argument 2, the argument from thrift. You know, it doesn't cost much to run arts and humanities. We're pretty beaten down. Look under the hood of the average human and you'll find a robust, hard-working machine. In this terrible world after the flood, people will have suffered a lot of losses, and you know who can lead the way on feeling sorry for themselves? Used to being under-resourced, under-financed, we'll be fine. And case is going to be a factor, we're very accustomed to unemployment. So, don't worry about that eventuality. Okay, argument 3, the argument from 5. Theory in arts and humanities is the higher ed leader on vibes. Can't spell Aristotle without praise. Read poetry, language exchange. If this boat were fighting for a place and rolls up on an island, that's the stuff you want. I don't even know what to pick for a list of you guys. Engineering? That's terrible by the fireside. Medical stuff, oh, I'm pretty anxious about. So the fine superiority of the arts is so obvious that arguing in support and counting against the thesis. So we must tread carefully here. But I'll leave it at saying that if the prospect of a post-climate disaster of brat summer is off the table, arts and humanities can deliver the brat nuclear winter. Argument 4, the argument of blame. Okay, so scientists represent themselves as problem solvers, or did you say solutions driven? Because your problems taken. Science, solving problems, made books. Here. Our friends tell us we're here in the boat because of a climate emergency, man-made climate change. Which man? Very forebears. You break it, you bought it, babe. Buying it in this scenario means drowning. Okay. So science as the answer slightly reminds me of the feeling out conflict that came to we looked to tackle a mental situation with childcare and healthcare and everything else. It's like, you guys have been in charge of this for ages. Whatever the phrase is, mutado, mutandis. Guys, this was your job. It wasn't poems in charge. Okay. So I'm just saying, you're giving a lot of Simon Harris new energy on that then. I agree that it is bad to be anti-science in the current climate, where science causes such an unmanageable mess that we do need you to deal with some of those things that have happened. But we might want to ask ourselves in a remake if, the maximally scientific interventionist approach is the one we want to pursue. Argument 5 is the mammy argument. This one is a little long-winded. In case where you were wondering, my expertise is in the history and philosophy of mathematics and the hard sciences. I work with the philosophy department. You might think this suggests divided loyalties that really like my hard lies in the work of the Hamilton building. But this is really more like a long-form surveillance software thing. Philosophy is the business from which all other academic disciplines emerge. This is basically indisputable. All global traditions of thought, or the ones that I've read about, start with questions like, what's going on? What are we made of? How much stuff is there? Then there's also questions like, what can I be sure of? Can I trust my experiences? And that's metaphysics and epistemology, the OGs. But ancient Greeks try and get a bit more natural with this stuff. Then Middle Ages, everyone gets a bit more back to religion, and it's a question of people arguing about ending stuff Aristotle probably said, right, stuff Jesus might have said. But back in the early moderns, they started going the naturalistic way, and Newton, the philosopher, invented science, physics. Lavoisier and Boyle, they started in chemistry. Mathematics has always just been domain restricted applied logic anyway, everyone should know. So basically what I'm saying is these are all just offshoots of philosophy, applied business. Some of our children are more open than others. So basically philosophy is the mammy, getting the disciplinary philosophy up to semi-independence, patting them on the back and sending them out to their own buildings. So a choice to have philosophy in the boat is a choice to bring the still fertile mammy that can restart the other children as we go running. Press X to respawn. Don't. One hopes that reproductive autonomy will be a big deal. We terminate one as we see it coming up, we can do it. So, much like the worst guy I ever went out with, I like to end things with a poem. In it, the poet describes his great preference for the arts over science and his personal misery at being forced to pursue a life of science instead of his love of poetry. These are the last two stanzas. Addressing poetry, where the muse is directly, he says, "And then where is the card? Poetry. For hast thou not been with me long ago, when o'er the cataract that raged below, breathless I hung, or when in silent awe, night's infinite magnificence I saw? Or when in many a thoughtful hour I felt thy sweetly troubling power, or heard the song of thy inspired band, the holy ones and high of every land. Spirit of beauty, though my life be now bent to thy sister, truth, by solemn vow, though I must need to leave thy sacred hill, yet be thine inward influence with me still, and with a constant hope inspire, and with a never quenched desire to see the glory of your joint abode, the home and birthplace of the throne of God." Beautiful words. I wonder whatever happened to William Rowan Hamlet.
Thank you again to all the speakers for a great debate. Hear, hear. Before we call the vote, just a reminder that there will be a wine reception in that room after this, and after this week will be in Doyle's, and people will join us. And this week I will ask that everyone in favor of STEM will shout STEM when I call on you, and arts when I call on you. So all those in favor of saving the Hamlet